On behalf of Center for Excellence on Equity, Empathy, and Diversity, I would like to welcome you all very briefly. This is an organization that was formed about over almost 3 years ago now, out of having small little conferences, small little webinars to address some of the issues pertaining to diversity, inclusion, communities facing challenges, and so there was this idea, and then we even launched a book, a handbook as well, and at that time there was this idea that we need to do something more, something bigger than just having a webinar here and there, and so what we decided was let's form this organization, Center for Excellence on Empathy, Equity, and Diversity, and organize more activities. And since that time, we've been organizing a lot. We've been organizing a lot of different things and trying to see how best we can support each other. It's trying to bring like-minded people, trying to exchange ideas, trying to share different experiences so that we can all benefit from each other in order to focus on some of these important issues that we all face on a daily basis. And so this idea about this awareness week came about last year. And so last year was the first time that we organized this. And this is the second year in a row that we have been organizing this, this awareness week. And basically, it's mainly to disseminate ideas and sharing experiences, as I said, on how small or big actions, of being inclusive, of showing kindness, of showing humility, showing compassion, for example, are key to creating health and well-being and sustainability, prospering peaceful and harmonious climate in a diverse workplace and society. So on that, I would like to welcome John Pateman, former CEO and Chief Librarian, social scientist, public speaker, thinker, newsmaker, and interfaith wedding officiant to this conference, who will give their opening remarks, opening speech. I would like to introduce Dr. John Pateman, who is a former CEO, as I said, and the chief librarian of the Thunder Bay Public Library, worked in public libraries for 44 years at all levels, from library assistant to chief librarian. He was the head of libraries in Hackney, Merton, Lincolnshire in the UK, founded Information for Social Change and the Cuban Libraries Solidarity Group. He was awarded the Cuban National Cultural Award for work in support of Cuban libraries. His publications include Public Libraries and Social Justice in 2010, in Public Libraries and Marxism. So I would like to welcome John Pateman, and followed by Dr. Mike Ghouse. I'll give an introduction before we go on to Dr. Mike Ghouse, but I'll give a brief introduction in the beginning. He's a social scientist, he's a public speaker, a thinker, author, newsmaker, and interfaith wedding officiant. He's deeply committed to pluralism in religion, politics, society, human rights, and religious freedom. He's the founder and president of the Center for Pluralism, director of the World Muslim Congress, a think tank, and a wedding officiant at Interfaith Marriages. His new book, American Muslim Agenda, is available on Amazon, and Standing Up for Others and Madam President are coming soon. He's committed to building cohesive societies and offers pluralistic solutions to issues of the day. His mission is to open people's hearts and minds towards fellow humans, and more about him at the ghostdiary.com. So without much ado, I would like to welcome John Pateman, the former CEO, to please give his address. John, please welcome to the session today, and to start this week off on hopefully on a positive note.
Okay, thank you very much for a very fulsome and generous introduction. I hope I don't get interrupted too much by the video hacker. I shall continue regardless. And first of all, I want to say Happy Diwali to all of you. The world is a particularly dark place at the moment, and we need to light it up as much as possible. This is what equity, empathy, and diversity can achieve: light up our organisations, our communities, and our world. This ambitious week-long event comes at the most opportune time. As we watch the terrible events taking place in Gaza play out on our TV screens, it is clear that the focus of this event, equity, empathy, diversity, kindness, forgiveness, are needed more than ever. I would like to add some other important concepts: inclusion, cohesion, and community needs. I retired last year after a career in public libraries spanning 44 years from 1978 to 2022. During that time, my vision for public libraries was driven by equity, empathy, diversity, inclusion, cohesion, and meeting those community needs. My first book, Developing a Needs-Based Library Service, published in 2003, suggested that a needs-based library service is predicated on the assumption that everyone has needs and everyone has different needs. Therefore, a needs-based library service is a universal concept which can be applied to any library in any circumstances at any time. At the heart of the needs-based library is a personal experience with a library staff member. Staff develop and sustain the relationships that embody and define library services. However well conceived the service model, without the people to humanize it, a service model is simply a set of instructions. Breaking barriers to service use is about building relationships. Building relationships is about taking time, and it requires staff who are trained, knowledgeable, and understanding of the community's needs and the library's role in meeting those needs. As we build relationships, we build communities. When we build communities, we sustain lifelong learning for all community members. What marks out the needs-based library? People speak about empathy, compassion, warmth, the human touch, respect, taking the time to listen and respond to individual circumstances and focusing help on people who need it the most. These skills were identified by Wilson and Birdie in The Right Man for the Job, the role of empathy, that all-important word, in community librarianship. These skills include communication, listening and negotiation skills, influencing relationships, reflective practice, improved confidence and assertiveness, and dealing with conflict. Equality, diversity, and inclusion are much used words that have a variety of meanings. They have been around for a while, but they were brought to the fore by the judicial murder of George Floyd in 2020, which gave added urgency to the Black Lives Matter movement. In the wake of this killing, many organizations rushed to show solidarity with Black Lives Matter, and in the process, some of them developed equity, diversity, and inclusion policies for the first time. That, of course, is the easy part. The much more difficult challenge is to put these words into action on a daily basis, to embed them into the fabric of organizations and into the hearts and minds of workers in order to shift attitudes and change behaviors. Individuals and organizations often do not know where to start on their equity, diversity, inclusion journey. They need guidance, a blueprint or roadmap that they can follow to take them to their destination. And they need methods, techniques, processes, and procedures for systematizing this work so that it becomes a part of the organizational culture, the way we do things around here. They also need ways of measuring their success on this long and often bumpy road, which has steep hills, blind corners, and dead ends. That is why performance measures and success criteria are essential to this process. And these can only be developed by those who know whether the programs are working or not, and who can feel and see the changes that impact, change, and improve their daily lives. This week-long event seeks to give people these tools, but for them to work, they should be used intuitively and not mechanically. They are not a ready-made solution that has been parachuted into organizations and which can simply be applied by following the directions on the instructions. They are tools which you need to shape and mold to fit your local context, your organization, and the concrete material conditions of the communities we serve. They're also designed to be experimented with, adapted, and used as the basis of developing new tools that will enrich the equity, diversity, and inclusion journey, each of which is unique. In doing so, we should never lose sight of the true meaning of equity, diversity, and inclusion. These are not metaphors, but powerful calls to action. They are words around which we and our organizations and our co-workers, and most importantly, the communities we serve, can rally around in the common cause of social justice, shared humanity, and building a better world. In the process, we will come to understand ourselves, our organizations, and our world better. But in the immortal words of Karl Marx, understanding the world is not enough. We must also seek to change it. And that is how I'd like to introduce this week. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, John Pateman. This was a really good start, and setting the context to the whole week that we are going to witness and hear from different scholars, different participants. So thank you so much, and we really appreciate you joining in at the last minute to give the opening remarks and welcoming remarks. Thank you so much, John Pateman. And now I would like to welcome Dr. Mike Ghouse. Dr. Mike, as I've introduced you, please, the floor is yours. And if you can share your opening remarks before we go on to the workshop.
1 second, Mike has got a problem when we log in, so I'm trying to help him connect to the computer with us.
Can we then move on to Mr. Shahid Akhtar?
One more minute, we'll wait for Mike.
I'm so interested in what John Pateman just mentioned, setting the context to what's happening. We all need to share some a little bit of humility, a little bit of kindness, a little bit of compassion, a little bit of empathy, to make this world a different place. If we can put ourselves in somebody else's shoes and see what or how the person is feeling, we would be able to understand a little bit more and perhaps make a difference in what that person is feeling or going through. And so with and I know that we have a day where we are focused on walking in someone's shoes. I think it's on Thursday that we'll be talking about it. But this was a really good introduction and setting this stage for the rest of the week. Thank you, Dr. John Pateman. Dr. Mohammed Tahir, are we on with Dr. Mike Ghouse, or do we go on to Shahid Akhtar?
No, 1 second, he is almost there. Sorry about the technical glitch. Actually, this week is celebrated as a worldwide kindness week. It started with November 13th as the Day for Kindness, or Kindness Day, and that the organizers, the Kindness Foundation, extended to make it a worldwide week for kindness. It is called World Kindness Week. They encourage schools, they encourage employers, they encourage communities to be kind in little acts, kind in little ways, kind in random ways, kind in any ways and anyhow, to be kind, to be just to the society, bearing which we have also connected with that same theme, to have humility in our steps. Humility at work would bring some kind of human understanding, humbleness in the workplace that is already there, but we need to remind. It's not that we are reinventing the wheel, it's just a reminder that we are trying to bring in the society so that people can be kind and just, kind and humble in serving the society that wherever they serve and whatever they do for the good of the social community, social causes, and social justice. Like John Pateman is an author of a book on social justice in libraries, and I enjoyed reading that book. It's a masterpiece, and it's a kind of a achievement he has documented in 44 years of his professional life. And I give a big applause to John for that achievement, for that kind of a contribution to the society to continue the work of social justice in any domain and any field that they serve in. Mike, are you there? Mike? I can't hear you.
Mute. Yes, sir, I'm here.
Yes, sir. You have been introduced to the audience, and the audience wants to hear Mike Ghouse and interpret the kindness that we are in need of being reminded everywhere, anyhow, anywhere. Please go ahead, Mike.
It's about empathy and sympathy.
That's
Yes.
right.
Well, the only reason we have to have kindness is for our own gain, our own benefit. Always we are motivated by the selfish reasons. And I think kindness, for example, Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, has said a very beautiful thing. His associates asked him, if you want to help others, what should we do? And he says, give some food, give some money, give some clothing. And the question goes one by one to the endless point. Then finally say, if you don't have anything, what should we give as a sign of kindness? He said, give a smile. It gives a hope to the people. And that is the form of kindness that I would appreciate it. If I'm kind to others, the nature, the God has created everything in harmony, complete harmony. And except we are given a free will, and it is the free will that creates conflicts and problems. Using that free will, we can be kind to each other. When we are kind to others, the whole energy grows together, and someday it will come to benefit us. For example, peace. Peace is not exclusive. It doesn't work by itself. If people around me are in peace, I am guaranteed to receive that peace. So it behooves me to make sure the other people are peace and also the secure. If other people are secure, I am secure. If I'm kind to others, others will be kind to me. And I think that's what I wanted to share.
Thank you, Mike.
My pleasure. So good to be with you. Thank you.
Thank you to chief guests, John Pateman and Mike Ghouse, for inaugurating this week-long celebration of kindness, humility, and compassion that is most required in the workplace. We hope and pray that this kind of a message reaches everyone wherever they are and whatever situation they are, and they promote the word kindness in every sense of the term. Thank you very much.
My pleasure. So good to be. Is this Dr. Abdul Hamid Hatiani? Okay. I was thinking of another Dr. Abdul Hamid, whose quotes I use frequently.
Not mine.
Okay.
Dr. Abdul Hamid is a sociologist and anthropologist, so you may have quoted him or found this name in community context or in social context. He is a social worker, social champion, and an ambassador for social work, social justice.
Indeed.
Thank you.
I work with the Center for Pluralism, and our goal is pluralism in simple words is respecting the otherness of the other. You are who you are, I am who I am. And the nature has created us to be very unique beings by design. We have a very unique thumbprint, each one of us, eye print, our DNA, even our taste buds are very unique. If we can respect that the nature our God has created us to be unique, respect each other and accept the given uniqueness, most of the conflicts will fade if we can do that. And pluralism works in religion. How you worship is should not matter what the essence of the worship is, under acknowledging that there is a creator. And that is one. Uh, then how you worship, whether you worship from hanging from the tree, kneeling, prostrating, it should not matter to us. We should respect each way people worship the creator. And then same thing goes in culture. What you wear, if a woman wears a hijab, what is my loss? If somebody eats some food that you think is weird, you got to think, what is the essence of eating food? Any food, anywhere. The essence of eating the food is nurturing, giving nurturance to the body. If you can accept these, and also if you can question ourselves, what is my loss? If a woman wears a hijab, or a Sikh wears a turban, or a Hindu person puts a dot, what is my loss? If we can answer ourselves that there is no loss in our prejudice, we need to rid the prejudice and receive what we in Hinduism is called moksha, or freedom. We will be free if we are free from prejudice. Forgiveness, I mean, we can go on, but I think for today, I will keep to this point, and I will be happy to answer any questions anybody has.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Ghouse. Really appreciate these few words that you have mentioned. So important, that each one of us is so different and we need to respect each other. And yeah, the question that you raised, what is my loss? That's a very important question that you raised. Anyway, we like to move forward, and I would like to sort of welcome Shahid Akhtar, our MC for the rest of the session. Shahid Akhtar, the floor is yours. I know you have been here, moderated sessions in the past, so please, go ahead. And I would like you to introduce yourself, Shahid Akhtar. You have been introduced many times at this forum or similar forums, and so now I'll leave it for you to sort of take on the floor and conduct the rest of the session.
Well, my introduction will be very brief. I'm Shahid Akhtar. I'm the president of Conciliators Without Border, a mediation and conflict resolution organization. In my other life, I'm also the co-chair and co-founder of the Canadian Association of Jews and Muslims. These are really very, very difficult days for us. And actually, I was very reluctant to appear on your program today because today we have two other presentations, including one school board that we are going, and we'll be meeting some parents of students who are Jewish and who have also Palestinian connection. So you can imagine what kind of situation we'll be in any event. But I thought that Dr. Tahir's program was also very important, and I could not, with Dr. Tahir, I just don't know how to say no to him. It's very difficult, almost impossible. In any event, Dr. Tahir, thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. And to the panel, I welcome you to this mediation skills workshop. I just want to quickly outline today's program as I had envisioned it. Now, Dr. Tahir and Dr. Hathiani, you can please correct me anytime you like, because you hold the technical aspect of it. I thought that there are 3 speakers today, and each one of them will have 15 to 20 minutes, after which there'll be a question and answer session. I was invited to talk about my concept of mediation that I introduced after I wrote my book called the 7 C's of conflict resolution, a practical guide for real ADR. And by real ADR, I meant an ADR, an alternative dispute resolution, which is key to mediation, but sometimes even alternative dispute resolution can be confrontational. It can be adversarial, and it can have that opposite us versus them kind of aspect. The 7 C's that I talked about were the 7 C's, and the name 7 C's simply was because I was talking about an attribute of each attribute starting with the letter C. So that way it became 7 C's. And with that 7 C's concept, I thought that we can conduct mediation in a way where, as Mike Roos very, very, very eloquently put it, that we can have our own. I had turned this phone on silence, but it has a life will of its own, and I don't know why it turns it on too loud. In any case, Dr. Ghouse said that sometimes we are selfish, and the way he put it, selfish is not necessarily a bad thing if, and here I introduce my concept. I wanted to come to that earlier, but I have this nasty habit of just addressing the issue that is right up front, and then I don't prepare that I'm going to parroting something that I have read, that I have written. I go along depending on what the audience can relate to. And because Dr. Ghouse had very eloquently mentioned that, I wanted to just share with you one aspect of this mediation technique that is called WIMBI, WIMBI. What is in my best interest? Now, this WIMBI means one thing. It is not selfish in the sense that you say my way or the highway, that you say I'm going to get everything that I want, not even that I'm going to win and my adversary is going to lose. WIMBI really means what is in my best interest means it is also in the interest of the other person that I'm dealing with. Because unless you have that, unless you have the interest of your opposing side, I can guarantee you that whatever victory you achieve will not be a victory. It will be a very temporary respite from the conflict that you had, but in winning that little victory, you would have lost a friend, a spouse, a colleague, a neighbor. And not only that, but your victory, particularly if it's a big victory, particularly if it's a victory where you smashed your adversary, the bigger your victory for you at the expense of the other person, the higher the resentment you will have in that person. So that is not your true interest. So it is not selfishness that way. So when I talk about your best true interest, that means your honest interest. Like that famous quote from the Dr. Ghosh was going to make a quotation from Dr. Hathiani, but I will quote the bard when in Hamlet, one of his characters says, this above all, to thine own self be true. There's no bigger honesty than being honest to yourself. And as long as you, in mediation, in any conflict resolution, as long as you know what is in your quote unquote true interest, you cannot go wrong. And that was the one of the aspects of the 7 C's, and I'll come to the actual letter C's in just a minute. But we must remember that all mediation is really about relationships, deep and foundational relationships, how fair or unfair we are with each other. That's why this 7 C's approach that I have, nothing is guaranteed. Nobody can guarantee any outcome, and I don't. But one thing I have reassured people, without using the word guarantee, that if they follow these 7 C's truly, appropriately, they will come up with the best possible resolution under the circumstances. And that's crucial, because under the circumstances mean a solution may not be the solution that you wanted 100%, but it will still be better than if you had gone through litigation, other alternative, litigation, gone to the police, gone to the tribunal, gone to the Human Rights Commission. Whichever route you would have accepted would perhaps have given you victory. But overall resolution, if you use these 7 C's, you will find that overall resolution is the best possible under the circumstances. And if you don't believe me, I'm going to engage you. I'm going to actually involve you in this. I'm going to ask you to think about. Please don't share it, because I don't want to be responsible for breaking any confidentiality. Just think about a conflict that you are going through and file it at the back of your head in that big filing cabinet. File it there, thinking that that's your dispute. As we go along, just check whether you have done this or not so far as you relate to your dispute, and you give yourself the honest answer. You will find that at the end of the process, you will have in your mind the best possible resolution under the circumstances if you follow these instructions. Now, the mediation can be a very creative process. Alternative really doesn't mean that, unfortunately, we have a habit of introducing systems. Like when ADR came along more than almost 30 years ago now, after some time, it became a bureaucratic system of its own. It lost that challenge that you wanted. It saved cost in the courts and all that, certainly, but it became a bureaucracy in itself. So we have to continue to be creative about it. And I just have one story that I want to relate to you, that how creative you can be. And I'm sure some of you have heard about it, because this was told. I heard this from William Ury, who is the guru of mediation and negotiations, and they wrote a book called Getting to Yes. And in that, he tells the story about a man in the Middle East who left his 3 sons 17 camels. And then he said, okay, oldest one will get half, the middle son will get 1/3, and the youngest one will get 1/9 of this. So father died, and the 3 kids, they said, well, there are 17 camels. The problem is, how are we going to divide 17 camels into 3 or 9? So big problem. So they go to this wise old woman who lived in one of the faraway oases, and they say to her that this is our problem. What do we do? The woman looks towards heaven, thinks a lot, and say, children, sorry, can't do much with 17 camels. There's only one thing I can do. I'm a poor woman, but I will offer you my only camel. So now there are 18 camels. The oldest son, easy, gets half, gets 9 camels. The middle son gets 1/3, that's 6 camels, and the youngest son gets 2, 1/9 of 18. So 9 plus 6 plus 2 come to 17. Each son got what the father wanted and still 1 camel left over, which they gave back to the old lady. So we are all looking for the 18th camel when it comes to mediation. And this creativity gives us the opportunity to deal with our conflicts in a non-adversarial, non-confrontational, and non-violent manner. So I don't want to take too much of my time, so I'll very briefly talk about the 7 C's that that created this methodology. The first C is conciliation. This is the most important step in addressing any problem. You have to conciliate with reality as it exists. Unless you recognize that reality, there's no way you can solve the problem. You can bury your head in the sand. You can be like that pigeon, which saw the cat and closed its eyes and said, there's no cat. Well, the cat is there. The cat exists. The reality is there. So that is the first. And I'm being very, very brief at this time. So I'm really giving you the heading. So for detail, you have either to attend a seminar or buy the book, whatever it is. So in any case, the second C is commitment. Sometimes the resolution is not very difficult. It's only the willingness that comes in the way. You're not willing to do it. It's so doable that you refuse to accept it, and you are not committed to do it. We are not clear in our own minds that we want to resolve this matter. The moment it comes to resolution, you back off. So you have to have that commitment, and we have to take our own advice that we want to resolve this issue. We cannot just go ahead and get into a mediation process without being fully committed to it. If we are not, mediation process will not work. The third is, and again, I had the chance only to hear Mike Ghouse today. He also referred to this about kindness. So there's third C is compassion. If you have that compassion, many of the other steps are not even needed, because sometime out of the goodness of your heart, you reach out to the adversary and they think that, with all that attitude that they're getting from you of very positive intention, almost a determination to resolve it and looking after not only but also their interests, chances are it may not even proceed further. The fourth C is communication. That simply means that the message sent has to be the message received. And that also means that don't just go for the spoken words. Don't just go what you hear the other person saying. Accept silence also as a pronounced part of communication. Accept body language as a part of that communication. How many times you have seen people saying things which in the heart of your heart that they don't mean it? Even in House of Lords debates, when they say, my worthy opponent, I don't think they think that they're worthy. And when they say with the due respect, I don't think they mean respect. Body language tells you a great deal. Look for the visceral reaction. Remember one thing, your mouth, your tongue, your language can tell you lies. Your brain can tell you lies. Your body is not capable of doing that. Your senses, immediately, viscerally, you know what is right and what is wrong for you. You don't have to wait for any explanation. The guide sits in you. I'm not very religious, but I say that even that divine sits in you, in your heart, if only you are willing to listen to what that sound is, what that voice is. So listen to that body, because that is also a part of communication. Sorry if I'm putting myself on fast forward, because I'm personally very conscious of the time, and I demand from the panel members as well the observance of time as well. So the fifth C is concentration. Once we know the nature of the problem, we have to concentrate on that like a laser beam. If peripheral issues come in mediation, and they always do, they actually come in seminars as well. We begin to talk about one thing, and then suddenly a different idea comes, and we digress. But in this case, we must not digress. Peripheral issue will come, park it on the side, put it on a notice board, on a post-it, say you'll deal with it after you have dealt with the core issue. Ask yourself that, are you being distracted or are you on focus? And the sixth C is compromise. Now, compromise does not mean compromising your core beliefs or your values. Compromise should never be confused with appeasement. And I honestly can't emphasize it enough. Anytime you try to appease anyone, you get exactly the opposite result. You get their contempt. You think you're pleasing them, you're not. You're losing your dignity, you're losing your selfhood, you're losing your self-esteem just to appease them, and all you're getting is contempt. But magnanimity and generosity is totally another thing, and you can compromise in that. And the best way to know what do you want to compromise? In Canada, Aboriginal people have a very, you have heard all that phrase, walk yourself, put yourself in their moccasins, put yourself in their shoes, for in your mind, switch that position for a minute. If you were them and they were you, what would you do? It's not a song, by the way, it is just a phrase that I said. If you were them and they were you, what would you do? And if you're again being honest with yourself, you will know the answer, that this is what is the right thing to do, and you'll have the courage and magnanimity to do that. And the final C is culmination. Once we begin this process, keep at it till the resolution is reached, or you decide that it cannot be done. That in itself is the resolution. Once you know that this process is not going to work and you've arrived at that. So ask yourself, have you put a closure to the issue you are thinking about? Once you have put a closure, then you should know that it is out of your life for now, at least. Be ready to walk away with your head raised high and your dignity intact. If you think that the outcome is something you cannot live with, there are times you say that I'm going to cut my losses, but I'm not going to accept that with that dignity. Because very simple reason. Our lives are too precious for us to be overwhelmed by bitterness, often caused by these disputes most of the time. And that's where the honesty comes in. Most of the time, there are choices. We make those choices, and then we become stubborn about it. So use this conflict for a source of transformation, enrichment, and fulfillment. It's an eye-opener for you. Deal with it directly, heads on, and once you know that the outcome could not have been avoided, just accept that with dignity, because when you have done everything possible, that very fact gives you spiritual and emotional strength. You know that is in this short time on earth, the avoidable aggravation, not aggravation that comes from heavens, but avoidable aggravation is just not worth it. Never opt for self-induced misery. The planet does not need one more conflict-ridden, unhappy, frustrated human being. Please do not elect to be that person. Thank you very much.
That was an incredible presentation of 7 C's, Doctor. I don't know what the next step is, but if I have a chance now to make some comments, I will be happy to do. Or
we'll do that in the question answer session. You can also comment at that, because I don't want to really take time away from other speakers. And so we'll follow the process. And Dr. Tahir,
yes, I'm here.
The list of speakers that I have is Dr. Jennifer Irwin. Is she in today?
Yes.
Oh, there you are. Hello. Dr. Jennifer Irwin is our next speaker. She's a professor in the Faculty of Health Sciences. When you say Western University, you mean London, Ontario?
Yes.
Okay, great. And Dr. Irwin is a multi-award-winning teacher at the faculty of that university, and she had really done great work in her field. So without much ado, I invite Dr. Jennifer Irwin. And as I said, you have 15 to 20 minutes. And after that, we'll move to the next speaker. Please, Dr. Irwin.
Okay, I just need access to share my screen, please, Mohammed.
Sure. I'll open up.
So it requires that you enable sharing. There we go.
Yes, I did it.
All right, so let's get this organized here. Second here, put this over here. Share my screen, share that one, and then open the presentation. Okay, so hopefully you can see my slides now.
Yes, we can.
Perfect. Okay, well, hello everyone, and thanks so much for inviting me to chat today about a topic that I'm pretty passionate about, and that topic is kindness and why it matters. So to let you know what I've got planned for our 15 to 20 minutes today, I'm going to start off talking about what I think kindness is, as well as what it isn't. And then we'll look at where it needs to be directed, some research findings about kindness's impact on things like our mood, anxiety, and resilience. In essence, some of the evidence that points to why kindness might have a positive impact on us and on our well-being in the workplace and really in any environment. So kindness. Kindness is a fundamental part of the human condition. It bridges politics, gender, religion, location, and it plays a really important role in inclusivity. There are lots of different definitions of kindness. However, I have yet to find a single definition with which I agree in full. So I put a few together to come up with what I call a working definition. And that definition is that kindness is a quality of being genuine, well-intentioned, and considerate, often, at least sometimes, requiring courage. I also think that kindness is often confused with niceness, where those definitions typically focus on giving joy, being polite, being friendly. However, I would argue that niceness isn't always kind, and kindness isn't always nice. So here's a couple of examples. It might be nice, it might feel nice for everyone to be given an A+ in school. And it would certainly feel nice as a prof to do that. But if it's not genuine, if it's not a genuine reflection of the student's work, I would argue that it's actually not kind. And I would argue this because it's not genuine and it robs students of the opportunity to learn, to self-reflect, and then better understand the missing content. It doesn't allow someone to grow academically. So assigning a grade with feedback that's a genuine reflection of someone's performance might not always feel as nice, but I would argue that it's a lot kinder. By the same token, one of the kindest things a teacher did for me certainly didn't feel very nice. I was in high school calculus, and it was my senior year, and I thought I was doing great. And after the first exam, the teacher came to me and said, "Jen, how do you think you did?" And I said, "Oh, I think I did great." And he said, "That's what was worrying me, because you failed." And I was like, "Oh, wow, okay, well, I will try harder. I'll work harder and I'll bring my grade up." And he said, "You know, I don't doubt you can do that, but I think that you're going to go places, and I don't want this to hamper your ability to get into the program at university that you want. So I'm going to ask you to drop calculus and pick up another course and then take it another time when it isn't so costly." And so I did. It didn't feel very nice, but it was very kind. And I suspect it took some courage on his part. Now, I also think that more often than not, kindness is also nice, and it can be catchy. I believe that kindness is catchy. I believe that it's powerful, and it can even shift the trajectory of unkindness. So that when there's unkindness coming at us, when we respond with kindness, that's the energy in the world that we can support growing. Kindness is catchy, and it's also multi-directional. Henry James said that there are three things in life that are important. The first is to be kind. The second is to be kind. And the third is to be kind. And I apply this excerpt as the first direction being towards ourselves, the second to those very near and dear to us, and the third as a general way of being in the world and extending it well beyond our own space towards others that we may never ever meet or know even exist. And so looking briefly at kindness to the self, what does this mean? Well, it's not about being a rug for others to walk all over. I believe that kindness towards ourselves includes boundaries that keep us emotionally and physically safe. I also believe that kindness to ourselves includes living true to ourselves, living true to our own values. So doing what we know is good and right for us, even when it might feel challenging. The reality is that we will never speak as much to another human being as we speak to ourselves in our own heads. What feel is in that dialogue? There are toxic effects of negative self-talk that include, but aren't limited to, increasing likelihood that we'll experience anxiety and depression, hindering other aspects of our emotional well-being, such as self-confidence and the ability to see opportunity in our lives. Negative self-talk can actually act as blinders for us seeing positive opportunities in our lives. Kindness in our own self-talk really matters. And in terms of how kindness is essential to long-term kindness towards others near and far, I think of it as a bank. If we just give it all away without making deposits, we'll eventually go broke. So all of us can think about ideas and examples of kindness towards ourselves when sometimes it might feel challenging. So for me, it's exercising when I'm really busy, or taking the time to meditate, and taking time to read fiction when I just need an escape. Now, the good news about the going broke conundrum is that being kind to others is actually a way, an evidence-based way, to refill our own bank. we receive as much as we give. It's almost like if we put a coin into a slot machine, we're pretty sure we're going to get 2 or more back every time. And when we look at kindness towards others near and far, the meaning of it really depends on who each of us is and how we might apply that definition. Some examples might be just genuinely smiling or waving at a neighbor as you walk by or you walk your dog. Maybe you buy someone's coffee or tea. And if you don't think that that can take courage, I'll share a little story with you. So several years ago, I was in line at the cafeteria on campus. And I just was paying it forward. So I just said, pay for the fella's coffee behind me. And the fella behind me got all awkward and said, "What are you doing? You don't need to do that." And it was all uncomfortable. And it was clear that he was very suspicious. And so I think maybe he thought I was trying to pick him up, this poor young man. So kindness sometimes requires courage. Okay? Examples of kindness towards others who are less close to us or we don't even know might be if you've got a special talent and you know how to knit. Maybe you're going to knit hats for preemie babies, or maybe you use refillable water containers, or you reduce your leisure time travel to be mindful of our carbon footprint. Okay. So far we've talked about in this talk some of the warm fuzzies of kindness. And now I want to talk a little bit about what kindness-related studies have found. So what's the evidence? Okay. This is a growing field, and some of the references here are just a few of the many growing sources of kindness evidence in the literature. So I'll talk briefly about some of the key findings from my own team's work, but we're one small fish in a very large pond, and so I'll also be talking about others' work. And in terms of recent relevant research-related findings, in pulling some outcomes from our related findings, we have found that engaging in kindness has been associated with significant improvements in university students' levels of resilience, anxiety, social anxiety, and negative affect, which is like negative emotions. Qualitatively, participants have described improvements in their well-being. We've also found reductions in stress, increases in our awarenesses of how students' actions impact others, and increased empathy as a consequence. And their overall enjoyment of class has improved. Other teams have found kindness can help reduce feelings of depression, as well as both the intensity and awareness of physical pain. And this has substantial applications for the chronic pain field. Supplying social contact and decreasing feelings of hostility and isolation are also consequences of engaging in kindness. Reducing feelings of stress, overeating, ulcers, enhancing feelings of joy, happiness, self-worth, optimism, and emotional resilience and vigor. Kindness's inclusivity helps to enhance social bonds and social belonging, that deep sense of connection that we have with others. It is crucial for the well-being of humans. This sense of connection is an important aspect of inclusion, which is an important component of equity, of course. Engaging in kind acts helps us to feel happy and feel grateful, and this often leads to more acts of kindness. So it's like a real loop of positivity, if you will. A researcher named Raposa, along with some of their colleagues, showed that this kind of pro-social behavior can positively influence a person's neurological system. So specifically, when we engage in a kind act, oxytocin is released, and this is a hormone that helps to mitigate or lessen feelings of fear and stress. Dopamine, which is often referred to as the happy hormone, also is released, and it helps us to experience feelings of motivation and pleasure. And serotonin, also released, it helps to regulate things like our mood, our sleep, and our digestion. Kindness has also been associated with changes in a molecular process called CTRA, and this has the potential to reduce health effects of negative psychological processes and adverse social conditions. And I think that right now, if there was ever a time in the world where we needed some balm for all of the adverse social conditions and the negative psychological processes that go along with it, I think the time is now that we're being called to kindness. So I find this stuff really interesting, and then I find the rest it's even more interesting. There's a lot of bang for our buck when it comes to kindness. The health benefits and sense of well-being that follow engaging in a kind act, or even just thinking about it, that good feeling will return even days afterwards when we're just thinking about it. This was coined the Mother Teresa effect by a group of Harvard University researchers whose study I'm going to talk about more in a couple of slides. So how does it work? In several ways. And very briefly, I'm going to overview this study by Inagaki's team and others like it. It helps to explain how it is that kindness actually physiologically helps us to feel better and reduce illness. So the big picture is this. The researchers assessed the relationships between receiving and giving social support and our vulnerability for negative psychological outcomes such as stress, depression, and loneliness. And they wanted to also look at the relationship between receiving and giving social support and the neural activity in response to socially rewarding and stressful events. So in a nutshell, they had participants engage in 3 tasks. While they were in an MRI scanner that would show different parts of their brains lighting up. So they did a stress task, which was they had to figure out a math problem and they were told someone was going to grade them on it. So that's pretty stressful. They did what's called an associative task, which had them viewing images of people close to them as well as strangers. And they had to do some simple no pressure math. And then they did a pro-social task or a kindness task. And in this task, participants had a chance to earn raffle tickets for themselves, and they were given the option to identify, if they wanted, someone else to share or actually give all the money to. So what did they find? Well, both the self-reported receiving and giving of social support were associated with a reduced vulnerability for negative psychological outcomes. So that in itself says, okay, kindness matters. However, the people in the study were less likely to experience stress, but the brain didn't light up quite the same for each condition. And here's a picture from the study of the brain lighting up in the different conditions. Across the 3 neuroimaging tasks, giving but not receiving kindness was related to stress reduction. So we're more likely to benefit from the psychological impact of kindness when we give it, even more than when we receive it. So when they ask that math question, the parts of the brain that typically light up to say that we're stressed lit up much less after giving social support or giving kindness. Also, after giving support and then looking at the pictures of other people, there was more activity in the part of the brain associated with decision-making and reward. And finally, when doing the more pro-social tasks, I'm just going to give someone else all the money or all the raffle tickets, all the raffle winnings, there was a much greater activity in the social connecting and bonding areas of the brain. So the authors concluded that giving support is an overlooked contribution that can benefit people. And unfortunately, stress tends to be abundant. And abundant stress suppresses certain parts of the immune system. So parts of this is because we've got this chemical, there's some hormone called cortisol, which has been implicated in suppressing the immune system. And kindness to ourselves and others is associated with a reduction in cortisol. In fact, one self-related kindness study found a reduction of 23% of this hormone. I'm just noticing the screen is on. Is that you telling me I've got a few minutes left? You're on mute. Okay, I see the timer.
Yes, you do. Yes,
okay.
you do.
All right, so I'll make sure I'm done when the timer says 20 minutes. Thanks. Yeah. Okay. So bottom line, why should we care about this research? Well, the reality is that kindness is an evidence-based, no to low-cost endeavor that's accessible to all, and it's associated with improved immune functioning, improved mental health, social connection, and life satisfaction of those giving, receiving it, and even just witnessing the kind acts. And the benefits are associated with improved productivity in the workplace and elsewhere, improved life satisfaction, a reduction in sick days, healthier relationships, and lower overall morbidity and mortality. So how do we do this, right? Well, the scientific term is oodles of ways. And my encouragement is that you tailor your kind acts for what resonates for you. You're welcome to use my working definition if you find that helpful. I think that kindness often comes down to truly seeing people. And I don't just mean visually or even visually seeing them. I mean, notice who people be, for lack of a better phrase, acknowledging their competencies, their kindness, their positive attributes, and even sometimes just acknowledging their tough stuff and doing it with empathy. And in the words of Ted Lasso, and felt by me in this moment, thank you. I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to be here and to talk about this topic that is very important to me. Thank you very much.
Thank you. This was really wonderful, and I hope we can actually implement some of them. And I think you did mention that people can use your work in their practices, Dr. Irwin. You did say that. That's wonderful, and I'm sure that Dr. Tahir will exchange emails and contact information of panel members and contributors whoever wants to stay in touch after this. That will be wonderful, because this kind of opportunity should not be a one-time opportunity. This should be building relationships, as we had heard in previous presentations. So now moving on, I have the pleasure of inviting Dr. Manjit Singh to this workshop. Dr. Manjit Singh is a principal of M.Singh Law Professional Corporation. So, Dr. Singh, we're all ears.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Shahid. And thank you to the speakers that have gone before me. It's been quite illuminating. In light of those comments, I think the best approach I can provide today is to give a brief of my own life journey to how it is that I ended up practicing mediation. I'm a mediator, and my mediation, of course, as many mediations are, focuses, when it's appropriate, on empathy and kindness in order to try to reach a resolution. I also am mindful of the time, and I will try to keep my comments short, as we have Professor Worthington after me, and I certainly want him to have his full-time complement. I'm on a panel with two professors, so I feel as the non-professor, I want to make sure that the professors have their full time of complement for the and then of course the question and answer for the audience, and we want to make sure that there's enough time. So anyhow, if I can begin, my background, my life journey is rather informative in terms of how I reached here and how it informs my thought processes as they are now. I am a son of, I had two siblings of immigrants to Canada, poor immigrants, if you will. They showed up with quite literally nothing but the clothes on their back. I grew up in a difficult situation in conflict-ridden environments at home, at school, in the neighborhoods. It is essentially all I knew growing up was conflict. Just as I entered my teenage years, I found myself questioning, if you will, my identity and questioning who I was and what my place in the world was. My family had cultural practices, but not strong religious beliefs. As many immigrant families, they practiced what they practiced, quote unquote, back home. And I knew of that, but I also, having been born and raised here, was also involved with, let's call it, for lack of a better phrase, general Canadian cultural practices. And it was difficult at that age to try to bridge the two and understand where I fit in the world and how to approach this world with these two different major cultural practices as part of my life. And I found a solution, as many second-generation immigrant children do, in religion. And unfortunately, and again, as many second-generation immigrant children do, I went to the extremes. I found some understanding in extremist religious expression, primarily because it gave clarity. Everything was black and white. Everything was good or bad. Everything was evil or not evil, us against the world. And I entered into sort of an extremist religious practice through my teenage years. When I got to university, I was very interested in, and always have been interested in, ethics and morality and such. And of course, religion speaks to that quite a bit. So I took my background, by the way, my undergrad was in history and philosophy. So I took a philosophy course in the philosophy of ethics and had a wonderful professor, one of the most important, and perhaps this is why I have such reverence for professors, but one of the most important people in my life is the professor of that course, who taught the ethics, philosophy of ethics, excuse me, wonderful elder gentleman, background was Swedish actually, and he was a humanist. And I remember he was so open and so kind and giving of his time that I would go to his office after class to speak with him. But when I say speak, remember, I was coming from a religious extremist background. So I was really debating and arguing with him and trying to get him to understand my perspective. And my perspective at the time was essentially that you cannot have any ethics without God. You cannot have any morality without religion, without some God or religion. Everything else is just nonsense. And he was so kind and understanding, not only in giving his time, but just the way he interacted with me. I can imagine how I came across, and I shudder to think about it. But he was very, very kind and gentle and communicated with me. And through that process, I understand now that my mind was sort of rebelling against this extremism that I had been indoctrinated with. And I was finding it so difficult that I was expressing it in confrontational language, even speaking to this professor, but really hoping to get something back that could make sense to me. And I did. I realized through that course and through my own personal development that, in fact, compassion and empathy and kindness come from within. It is really not necessary to have an external force or some external power to require us to do it or to indoctrinate us to do it. It is within all of us as human beings. Every human being has this. I obviously left the extremist religious path. In fact, I left religion altogether. I am an atheist now. But I've never, ever left that grounding of empathy, of kindness, of consideration, of compassion, of commonality, of humanity. I consider myself to be a humanist. Now, in the process of going through school, I ended up, again, with my background, I ended up becoming a lawyer, as I figured, well, I'm good at conflict, so let's continue on this path. And I became a lawyer, in fact, a litigator. So I practiced in litigation, adversarial field of practice. I have been practicing now for about a decade and a half. And in the course of that practice, I was given a nickname, a moniker by my law firm. They called me the Settlement King, just a sort of tongue-in-cheek moniker, because I would often find ways to resolve conflict outside of court, or outside of trial at least. And I always did it because it was often in the best interest of the client. In fact, it was almost always in the best interest of the client. I believe Mr. Ghouse mentioned earlier, I believe it was Mr. Ghouse. I hope if I'm mistaken, please forgive me, about Winby, what is in the best interest. Or perhaps it was Mr. Akhtar, and I apologize, I lost who mentioned that. But what is in my best interest? And that is really how we approach mediation as practitioners, as lawyers. What is in my client's best interest? And it was often to settle. And as I realized that, and as I continued to practice, I thought, well, perhaps just being on one side is perfectly fine. Of course, it's perfectly valid within our system, but perhaps I could be of more value as a mediator. And I followed that path then. And I am now accredited. I am a qualified mediator and arbitrator with the ADR Institution of Canada in Ontario, and I've been practicing mediation for the last, I would say about 3 years or 4 years or so. And I bring to those mediations my sort of perception from my background, and that is that conflict is all around us, but the processes we use often exacerbate that very conflict, and they don't reach resolution. Litigation is very important, and I am still a litigator. I still practice litigation. I will not deny that it is a very important part of our society to resolve resolutions, and sometimes you need a third party to reach a decision that cannot be resolved between the parties. But even as a litigator, I often say to my clients that anecdotally, we are told that about 95% of litigations never get to trial. They reach some sort of resolution before. And that is partially because at some point, parties realize, or they come to accept, that resolving the conflict through a resolution in which they have say of how it is resolved, as opposed to a judge who has the final say, might be the better path. It also might be the cheaper path, by the way, in terms of how law is practiced in Ontario. But having a say in how things are resolved tends to be better than leaving it up to a judge. And in those resolutions, I find that if the parties are able to, and they often are, and it may be difficult at first, but they often do, if they're able to understand that resolution in mediation requires both parties to agree, and this is different than litigation, of course. In litigation, it doesn't require anyone to agree. The judge will just simply tell you what the decision is. In mediation, it requires both parties to agree to whatever the solution is, whatever the resolution is. And every human being intuitively understands that if that is the case, then you must consider what the other side wants. You must consider what is motivating them, what are in their interests, what they hope to accomplish, because you know that you have to present something. If indeed you really do want resolution, you must put something on the table that they are willing to accept because it matches what they want, what they hope to achieve, what they want in terms of a resolution. And it is that process that allows mediators, and of course as counsel to clients in a mediation, to get the parties to start thinking in terms of as speakers have said earlier today, putting ourselves in the shoes of the other side and just being able to have even that bare level of compassion, if you will, not so much, because often parties are very upset with each other. Compassion in the sense of, if this party, if I can give them what they want, then I can also get what I want. And then the best mediations, of course, are if it's possible that the relationship can be resolved. That is to, saved, I should say. That is to say, a compassionate resolution would allow both sides to leave with some level of dignity and some level of a possibility of continuing the relationship. In other words, as earlier was said by one of the speakers, if you fight to crush the other side, they're not likely first, they're not likely to want to resolve it. But first, even if they do, even if you are able to crush them and they reach resolution, they're not very likely to want to continue a relationship with you. And in some instances, admittedly, it's not important at all. But in other instances, for instance, employer, employee, family, etc., and we can go on with many examples, there is some interest that the relationship ought to be continued, even in business. Even in business, which is considered very cold calculations, wouldn't it be better if you were able to salvage the business relationship? Because at the end of the day, you entered into that business relationship because you thought it'd be good for your business. And then you reached a conflict. But if you're able to resolve that conflict and reach a resolution that allows you to continue that relationship in some form or manner, presumably it would be good for your business. So I've approached my practice from that perspective, and I hope it informs others as well, that even in an adversarial milieu, if you will, compassion, kindness, empathy, the ability to just recognize and accept the other side has some needs and wants that they want, that they require to be fulfilled, and that they are not entirely unreasonable, is the path towards resolution. It is vital towards reaching some sort of conflict resolution. And it is, from my perspective as a secularist, it is quite possible to tap into those feelings and into those thoughts and ideas without referring to an external power or external requirement from, say, religion or God or spiritual, what have you. It is simply enough to tap into everyone's humanity. We all have it. It's all inside each and every one of us. And if it can be tapped into, you can reach resolution, even where resolution otherwise seems unreachable. And with that, I think I've had my 10 minutes of fame, so I'll leave it with that, because I certainly want to give Professor Worthington his full complement of time, and I realize that we still want to give a question and answer period for the audience.
Well, thank you so much, Manjit Singh. You have really given some wonderful, wonderful tips to the mediators, but at the same time, we talked about the old bards telling, his quotation that to thine own self be true. I think the way you shared with us, you thought us worthy of sharing this bio of you, that is most moving, because that's where the truth lies. That's who we actually are. We may read lots of books, we may listen to a lot of lectures and all that, but that is not the same as coming from within, coming from the heart, coming from your own life, because that life, again, does not mislead you. That life takes you where you're supposed to be eventually, and your best guide is sitting inside you, waiting to discover that, yes, I exist. So thank you very much, and we would really love to have you on different seminars and workshops and all that. So Dr. Tahir, please make sure that we have each other's emails and all that, because it is absolutely wonderful to share that bio. And congratulations on your journey from an extremist religious zealot to being an atheist. That's quite an achievement, I must say.
Thank you.
So now, and we'll come back to not only question answers, but also some of us may have comments about each other's presentation. We'll come back to it, but I want to make sure that we all get not 10 minutes of fame, but 15 to 20 minutes of fame as well. So, and now I invite the last speaker of this session, Dr. Everett Worthington. Professor Worthington, we're all yours. Just wanted to say that he is a Commonwealth professor emeritus at Virginia Commonwealth University and holds a faculty affiliate appointment at the Institute for Quantitative Social Sciences. Whatever that may mean, Professor, please go ahead. We're all yours.
Well, thank you. I'm really happy to be with you. I would like to share my screen if you can enable that if it needs to be. So let me try that. Good. Technology rules.
Yeah, it does. Great.
I usually say that when technology has gone wrong, so what I study mostly is forgiveness, and I would like to really think with you today a little bit about the role of forgiveness in mediation. So let me start out with a study that was done by Mike McCullough, who's eminent psychologist. I was very blessed to be his advisor when he was in graduate school, but he's done so many great things. What Mike did is he invited people to come into his laboratory after they had been hurt or offended, and then to come back for 19 straight days. And at the end of that time, he crunched the data and basically found that he could explain what would happen in terms of reduction of unforgiveness in the person's life using a power curve. And it was a really nice, smooth power curve. A power curve means that something falls off very quickly, and then it kind of tails off and falls off very little after that. This kind of power curve has been used to explain things like how often earthquakes happen, or how often volcanoes erupt, or the behavior of stock markets or conflict in societies, how people lose their temper and express them angry emotions, or get depressed and express depressed emotions. So it's been used in many ways. The thing that I thought made Mike's presentation or his publication really something unique was then he plotted what happened with individuals. And what he got was basically called a spaghetti plot. You can see an example of one of his two studies right there. I'll talk a little bit about that a little more in just a minute, but basically what this law, this power law shows is that we can explain behaviors of groups, but we can't predict their behavior. And we certainly can't predict the behavior of people within groups. So the reason that this is true is because of what's called complexity theory. And you all may know a lot about complexity theory, but just in case you haven't come across that, let me say that this is about complex adaptive systems. So complex adaptive systems are complex. And by that, I mean that there are many, many causes. Sometimes there may be 1,000 or more causes for a behavior. There are so many causes that we cannot really understand what is causing our behavior. Now, individuals are complex adaptive systems. Certainly, communities and societies are complex adaptive systems. And, you know, I'm sure we've all seen trying to predict the path of a hurricane. And what we get with that is we get a spaghetti plot. We get a plot that is all about, different paths that could happen if there are different initial conditions. So these are just probabilistic solutions to this. Nobody can tell how that hurricane is going to go. You see in the kind of left quadrant that there is a path that it goes around and around, and then this one goes on vacation to Bermuda. It's just really hard to predict. So what Mike did was he found that there were these complex adaptive systems, and that is that we do adapt to the circumstances that we face. And it turns out there's not just one solution to this. There's not even one best solution to this. There are many, many stable solutions. So here are Mike's two different studies, and he just took a random every 15th person and plotted it. But basically, what we see here is that the spaghetti plots kind of resolve into different families of solutions. So there are some people that when they were hurt, they just got over it really quickly, like within a day, or they just don't even think about it again. And then there are other people that it kind of goes down fairly fast. And then there are some where it just slides down over time. There's some that the whole 19 days, they're angry the whole time. And there are even people in there that just get angrier the longer that they think about it. So there are these families of solutions, all of which can really be stable. Now, these are complex systems, they're adaptive systems, but they are also systems, meaning that there are many of these interacting causal variables. And because this is really kind of the key to my talk right here, I put these pictures of cobras up there, very happy, greeting pictures of cobras. I really like staring at these. But basically, this is just to remind us of a little anecdote. There was a province in India that was being overrun with cobras. And so the administrator in this province says, well, I have a solution to this. We just need to put a bounty on cobras, and we can get people to kill these cobras and bring in the cobra, carcasses, and we will give them money. And so by the end of the first year, they had distributed thousands and thousands of dollars in cobra bounties, and they still had the same number of cobras. And so they started looking into, why do we have the same number of cobras? I don't understand this. And what they found was that there were some really clever entrepreneurs in this province that had created cobra farms in which they were breeding cobras so that they could kill them so that they could get the bounty. So the administrator was pretty disgusted. He says, well, I have a solution to this problem. And the solution was just stop the bounties on cobras. I'm sure that you're sitting there thinking about the implications of what happened next. What happened next is all of the people who had the cobra farms released the cobras. And now there were 3 times as many cobras. There's this unanticipated negative consequence of thinking I have the solution to a very complex problem. We almost never do. So this complex adaptive systems, it really explains many behaviors. That's a really nice example. I won't give it to you just for time. So I'm going to risk a Cobra bounty solution to the problem of, societal and couple conflict. And so, by just touting the importance of forgiveness. Now, I want to say, I don't want to make this a Cobra bounty solution. There have to be many solutions to these problems. Forgiveness is really only one of those, so I don't want to be misunderstood. So, so if I want to try to promote forgiveness, because if we have people interacting in conflict, they hurt each other and they have memories and they carry those memories. And so if I don't deal with those memories in some way, then coming up with a stable societal solution can be fraught, because people are just going to allow those memories to intrude. Now, there are a lot of effective ways of promoting forgiveness. Those exist. Many of them exist in religious communities, and all 5 major religions really value forgiveness, and they have different practices and beliefs and that their adherents can use. We have other creative solutions that can come from people who live in the community. But I'm going to talk about a scientific approach that we took. And this is really based on a protocol to help people who want to forgive to be able to forgive. And this is called Reach Forgiveness. And the core of that model is 5 steps to reach emotional forgiveness. So there are 2 types of forgiveness. One is to make a decision to treat the other person differently, and the other is to experience an emotional change, an emotional peace that comes about. Those 2 are independent of each other. They're only correlated at a correlation of 0.4, which is not explaining much of the predictability from one to the other. So they are not the same. They're not joined to each other. They are 2 independent processes. The core of this Reach Forgiveness model is to help people work through 5 steps to reach emotional forgiveness, and then to offer them the chance to make a decision to forgive. Now, there are things that we do ahead of time. We help them assess their unforgiveness toward a person and work on that particular instance. And we do that so that when they assess the same thing at the end of this process, they can convince themselves that this worked. Another thing we do at the beginning is to help them think about the hardest transgression they ever successfully forgave. And they, by doing this, they prove to themselves that they have in the past been able to forgive very difficult things. We then define 2 types of forgiveness that we're going to work on, and then talk about the benefits of forgiving to the person who is the forgiver. And then at the end, after that core of emotional forgiveness and decisional forgiveness, we have them apply that again and again to different transgressions they have to deal with, so that they can generalize the gains and maintain the gains that they made. So just the core, that Reach model, R is recall the hurt without rehearsing what a jerk the person is. E, empathize with the person who harmed me. A, give an altruistic gift, a gift of forgiveness that this person does not deserve, and to give that with an attitude of humility. And then C, commit to the forgiveness experience so that H, we can hold on to that forgiveness whenever we doubt. This sounds strangely like a few of those 7 C's, I'm just saying. But so we have been studying this for about 30 some years, and there have been over 30 randomized controlled trials of this method, over 24 really in looking at groups, and then 7 in do-it-yourself workbooks. All the materials are free. They are on my website, downloadable free, or the workbooks are available free at reach.discoverforgiveness.org. So these do-it-yourself workbooks, we've just finished a big worldwide trial with 4,598 people in 5 countries, which are China, Indonesia, Ukraine, Colombia, and South Africa. All of these have histories of a lot of conflict, and we have looked at letting people complete a 3.5-hour do-it-yourself workbook to forgive events that they have in their lives, and we had some very nice results with that. So we believe that promoting forgiveness might help restore peace in post-conflict societies. So this is kind of what the English version of this workbook looks like. What we found, just to give you the quick version, is we found that when people complete these 3.5 or less than 3.5-hour workbooks, they reduce their unforgiveness by about 1/2 of a standard deviation. To put that in context, 26 weeks of cognitive behavioral therapy will reduce people's depression by 1.24 standard deviations. And these people are receiving 1/2 a standard deviation of decrease in unforgiveness. And even though depression and anxiety are not mentioned, they get about 1/5 of the benefit for a 3.5-hour workbook. They get 1/5 of the benefit of 26 weeks of cognitive behavioral therapy and reduction of depression and anxiety. We also looked at trait forgiveness and also forbearance, a kind of a restraint for the good of the group, decisional forgiveness, and then flourishing. We also measured things like sleep quality and hope and other minor things. Basically, these workbooks work. This is kind of the results graphed out. We used a waiting list crossover design. Basically, when people fill out the workbook, they get better. Their depression is reduced, their anxiety is reduced, and then they maintain it. The other people stay pretty much the same in the waiting period, and then they get better when they fill out the workbook. So the sites are different. This is like Mike McCullough's, you can measure overall, but individuals differ. And so our sites differed. So let me think briefly about changing communities. And to do this, if you think about, I want to change, I'd like to help a city be more forgiving. How do you do that? Well, you have to change mediating structures. That is, you have to change communities and groups within the city, such as universities or colleges or schools at the primary level, or workplaces or community organizations. And so we tried to help a university change, and we assessed almost 3,000 students, faculty, and staff at this university in Colombia. And it's a secular, private, non-religious university. And we tried to help them create a program that they could promote forgiveness within their university. So just to jump to the outcomes, we found that creating this program produced positive outcomes in terms of forgiveness.
Sorry to interrupt, Professor, but we are really running out of time.
Okay.
So if you could please wrap it up, if you don't mind.
Okay. So it produced positive outcomes: forgiveness, and depression and anxiety, engagement matters, and how much time that people spend matters. So the point of all of this really is that there are a number of solutions that are possible. But with any problem in mediation or forgiveness, there's not really one solution. There are many solutions that end up being good solutions. And by thinking that we have the one problem, we can create a lot of unanticipated consequences. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Professor. And I apologize for interjecting. But to be fair to everybody else, we just needed some time. We were hoping to get 20 minutes for question and answer, but we only have about 10 minutes now. And some of our panel members have to leave. They have other engagements as well. So just to save time, I will ask you if you could put any question in the chat, and because there's no Q&A here, but to keep my promise to Dr. Ghouse, and then some interjection with Manjit Singh, I will invite Dr. Ghouse first to be brief in your comment, please. You're muted.
I like the 6 C's you talked about, and I think it's an amazing thing. When we talked about selfishness, the deep, real selfishness, it teaches you to have a sustained relationship where you feel secure, and the ultimate of secure selfishness. And you mentioned about conflict mitigation, and Prophet Muhammad's all attitude in his actions was profit mitigation and goodwill nurturance at the same time. I don't want to take time about the story of the Kaaba, but that's what I like that. And Dr. Irwin's example of grading students was very interesting. And also she mentioned about inclusivity. And I think it is a very important thing to be included, in the parties, in the workplace. If you are excluded, you feel odd, you don't feel the same productiveness and kindness towards each other. Inclusivity is very important. And I was so joyful to see Mother Teresa's picture there. She is one of the persons I admire, and she is the definition of kindness to me. And Dr. Manjit Singh mentioned the conflict mitigation and resolution, and I think I like the ideas. And Dr. Worthington mentioned about forgiveness and mediation, and it is in all religions. And indeed, Prophet Muhammad was asked once, who among all of these 8 billion people God loves the most? He said, the one who forgives and forgives often. And of course, it is central to the Jesus teachings, forgiveness. And I think the 5 steps you mentioned about the emotional forgiveness was very interesting. And I also enjoyed the benefits of forgiveness. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you so much. And now, Dr. Irwin has to leave for another seminar at 12:58. Dr. Irwin, you have no idea how much you're going to cover in those 2 minutes that we will miss you. So 12:58 is okay. Thank you so much. We thoroughly enjoyed your presentation. It was extremely useful, and perhaps we can act on some of the things you have said. I don't see any questions in the chat, but I would just invite Manjit, because Manjit had mentioned a few things, and he said he'll come back in question and answer. So just a very brief comment concluding your remarks, Manjit.
Sure. Thank you very much. I don't have much more to add. I've thoroughly enjoyed hearing everyone, all the speakers today, both professors on the panel with me. Shahid, your 7 C's covered everything so well that as being on the mediation panel as a practicing mediator, I don't have much to add. I suppose I will just conclude with this, that conflict resolution is indeed not only possible, but I would suggest more probable if we tap into the very emotions, if you will, that are central to today's session: empathy, compassion, inclusivity. And this is true across the board for all human beings, including in diverse milieux. And really with that, those are my final words.
Thank you. And I just have not so much a question, but a comment for Dr. Worthington's excellent presentation, particularly about forgiveness. If there is one thing needed in today's world, it is that sentiment of forgiveness, which is in extremely short supply, particularly today. So I'm going to ask his permission to use some of what he said in this afternoon's the session that I'm really dreading it, come to think of it. Can you imagine facing a group of angry Jewish mothers and angry Muslim mothers defending their children in a school board? And the school board decided just to put us before the lions and let us deal with it. But what I thought was that in such angry moments, one thing that works is a little humor. It's not callous to use it. It is actually to bring things a little bit at a human level. And I'm going to, if Professor, you permit me, your Cobra syndrome into that, because that is hilarious, the way the cobras kept on multiplying because we thought we had a solution. And isn't it exactly the same what we see in the Middle East today? We thought 30, 40 years ago that we finally got the solution. We went to Oslo, we got the solution. And things, people like us, conflict management people, we made a difference. And the difference we made was we made things worse. Today, they're much worse than they are. So the Cobra example really lies into that. It is just a couple of minutes left. And I really want to thank Dr. Tahir for gathering such wonderful panelists today. And it is, I'm sure you all have seen that Ingrid Bergman and Humphrey Bogart's movie Casablanca, and that comment when they're walking towards the plane, when this character says, "It is the beginning of a great friendship." So in that respect, I really hope, Dr. Tahir, that you have started something. This is how networks start. This is how good things start. You casually come into an encounter and you don't know where it will go, as long as you keep an open mind and open heart to it. Like Manjit, I learned a long time ago, after so much frustration, and I'll leave you on that note, after so much frustration of trying to get this or that, acquire this or that, having this or that, I realized that I'm done with it. I'm not chasing anything in life. I'm not running after anything. But if God sends me, or cosmos, or universe, or life, or time, sends something my way, then I must not reject it. I must not kick it. I should embrace it. I should welcome it and run with it, because that is what I was supposed to get. That is what I was supposed to do. That is how you don't have to go to palmists and astrologers to see what's going to happen in your life. You know what's going to happen in your life because you will allow that to come in. We are the only people who are standing in our way more than anybody else. If we just open it up and embrace what is coming our way, because that is what was intended to. we create artificial barriers, restrictions for that not to come to us. So, and with that note, I again thank Dr. Tahir, again thank Professor and Manjit and Dr. Ghouse and the wonderful person who just, Dr. Irwin, for a wonderful panel. And thank you very much indeed. Dr. Tahir.
Thank you, Dr. Shahid Akhtar. You are the best mediator and you are the best moderator for this panel. I wouldn't have been able to do this, and I don't think I would have found someone so skillful and so knowledgeable to be able to mediate and moderate this mediation training skills program. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
One request to Manjit Singh. Would you mind repeating the resolution request that you made? We'll pass a resolution right away, and we will be definitely able to release a press release due on this resolution as you just highlighted. Do you mind repeating the statement for the resolution?
Sorry, are you asking me?
Yes, please.
Which statement of the resolution? I'm sorry, I'm lost here.
You mentioned we need to pass a resolution on empathy and you continued.
Oh, no. No, I didn't mean to say that we should pass a resolution. I meant to say, and I apologize, I meant to say that the path towards conflict resolution lies in empathy and compassion.
Yes.
But let us resolve in your golden words that we need to have that path, a reminder to that path in such occasions, in such times when we are passing through the crisis, in whatever name you call it, it's a crisis that is not just COVID related, not just the present tension across the Middle East and across the globe, but we need to be as human as possible, as humanly as possible, and as humanitarian as possible. Like Mike Ghouse wants to take away the mic from me. Mike is ready to speak about humanitarian, but he has to be given another chance tomorrow, probably when we talk of forgiveness in the next session tomorrow at forgiveness. Maybe he will be the best person to raise the idea of humanity and humanitarian approach in all that we do. We as human beings, we decided to have this Center for Equity, Empathy, and Diversity, not for any gains. We don't have any money, we don't have any funding. We have just created this organization for spreading the word, spreading the idea of discussing the equity and equitable society that we need to establish. We need to reconsolidate our ideas, train people to go ahead in doing what they do in the best way that is good for everyone. Like, for example, today we started with social justice. The first speaker, John Pateman, he brought us to social justice. And in the process, we have gone through compassion with Mike Ghouse, with kindness as evidence-based Professor Irwin's presentation. And from our Manjit Singh's presentation, we went through the life process of being consolidator, or being a mediator, or being a skilled person who can develop that kind of inspiration to others and who encourages others to lead the path of mediation as a part of the kindness process. And in the end, we have forgiveness from Professor Everett, who ended up the social justice nuts and bolts with forgiveness. Thank you, Professor Everett, and thank you everyone for this nice presentation. It's educating everyone, including ourselves. And thank you, and stay in touch.
Thank you so much. Goodbye now.
Bye, everyone.
Bye now.
Hello, any other questions for me before I leave? Swati, nice to see you again. I didn't hear your voice or questions. Thank you very much.